Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this chat that I'll be having with Party Leader of the Barbados Labour Party, Mia Amor Mottley, and Carol Roberts. Welcome to you all. With 4 days left to go before polling day in Barbados, it's been a grueling almost 4 weeks of campaigning for all of the parties involved. The Barbados Labour Party in particular has been on the road from as early as February of this year, and now they're winding down to the last 4 days of the campaign. And I thought it would be nice to have an afternoon chat, a Sunday afternoon chat, with party leader Mia Amor Mottley. We've heard everything that she said, but we've heard it from a platform. We want a softer approach this afternoon, and so I say good afternoon to you, Mia Amor Mottley.
Thank you, Carol.
Yes.
How are you?
I am well. Does it feel good to just sit back, relax?
Well, it has. I mean, today is the day of Pentecost, so I spent the morning in church, well, mid-morning in church with the Spiritual Baptist, so it's actually been a less grueling day than the other days have been in the campaign.
All right. Well, let me set the agenda. I think almost everybody knows that Miss Mottley and I are actually very good friends, and so you may be thinking, wow, some easy questions. No, not this afternoon. There are some questions that I think everybody wants answers to, and so here we go. With 4 days left to go in the campaign, are you satisfied with your strategy?
I think so. Obviously, when it's your strategy, there are always things that you can tweak better, things that we feel that we can do better. But that's a good thing. But I want to say that I'm really very proud of both the organizers behind the scene, but in particular of my team. I set a very clear directive that we did not want to go low. And this means a lot to me. Last night I addressed it when I had the youth rally, the bottom of Tweedside Road. I do not, like some politicians, believe that politics has its own morality. I really don't. And I think that part of the apathy that we are seeing in our societies is as a result of that. I really want to commend my team, my candidates, and those who've mounted our platform, for the most part, completely taken on board that approach. I believe we have a strong manifesto. I believe that Barbadians, more than anything else, want to know what the future is about. I believe that Barbadians would have hoped for a shorter campaign, because this has been a long period. We've gone 5 years, 2.5 months. So all of these things have combined. People want to get on. We all know that something isn't right in the country. As Plastic Bag would say, the country's sick, the country ain't well. People may not know exactly what is wrong, but they know something is wrong. Okay. And I think people want to look forward, and I've tried to keep the platform looking forward rather than only seeking to be the adversarial Westminster type, old-style politics.
The Barbados Labour Party was out front almost in setting the agenda and the tone and the issues of this campaign. Do you feel justified?
Well, yes, because those things were literally things that we took from rubbing shoulders with people. I mean, I've said from the beginning, whether in terms of the issues that we've spoken about, or whether in terms of the manifesto, which we call the People's Manifesto, this is the people of Barbados speaking. I mean, we have been on the road. That's why I smiled to myself when you talked about a 4-week campaign, or even when you referred to February. This has been literally an interaction with the Barbadian public, because remember, within 3 months of the last election, the country discovered that everything upon which the government had said it was being elected was literally thrown out through the window. It was not going to lay off persons. That became an issue. It was not going to sell state assets. That was announced. It was not going to charge fees at the university. That became an issue. So that literally within 3 months we went to the Hilton Hotel, if you recall, and the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Central Bank said, wow, the reserves are in trouble. We have major problems. By the August of that year, August 13th, 2013 to be precise, a major 15 and 19-month fiscal adjustment strategy was being announced with major implications. The Prime Minister came the next month and he said that he would not allow any two people from the same household to go home, that it would be a last in, first out policy. Those things went through the window. And by December 13th, another announcement came from the Minister of Finance, December 13th, 2013. So we have been on the road. The layoffs started at the beginning of 2014. Our rubbing shoulders, our people's assemblies. So the issues have come from the people.
Okay. The People's Manifesto, I want to go to that. You have been, for the last 10 days, touting the virtues of the People's Manifesto. And people have begun to take a lot of the contents on board, the abolition of the road tax and NSRL and all the rest. But I want to ask you this. How are you going to lift it from text to reality?
Give me the vote and watch me. No, realistically, look, we've been very clear. The people vote on Thursday. Should it be the will of the people that we are the government, then the cabinet has to set about the basis of literally governing the country from next Monday. I'm not even joking. In June, we have major issues with foreign debt payments. We've indicated that throughout the campaign. Our foreign reserves are much less than the country is comfortable with. So we have some economic stabilization to do straight off the bat. We have also, and I've said from last October, that the first working day of Parliament has to see the abolition of the NSRL, has to see the abolition of the tax clearance certificates that are now grinding commerce to a halt in this country, because people very often need access to cash flow to clear some of the same taxes that they are having difficulties with, and that they may need access to cash flow because somebody's ill or because for all kinds of reasons. The business needs working capital. So that repeal of the tax clearance certificates are critical. We've also agreed that we are going to announce, so that parents and students can plan, that the University of the West Indies, that there will be no fees from September. That will be by way of a ministerial statement. I have my own particular pet peeve, which is the decriminalization of illegal vending. There are too many people in this country who don't believe that there is one Barbados, and who are at the front line of persecution, and who therefore are carried to court and have criminal convictions for something that they ought not to, as we come to the third decade of the 21st century.
No.
And symbolically, I would want my government to be associated with relieving them of that burden.
That's all well and good, because we are here, because you are here. Now, should you be successful at the polls, you then have to start the grinding work of putting these things in place. And some may say, well, it's all idealistic. This is the ideal Barbados. But when you get down to work, you may find some stumbling blocks. You may find that it's just not realistic. What do you say?
Carol, do you know how cabinet works? The cabinet paper will come up, and it will be a cabinet paper setting out what the facts are in respect of these are the fees at the University of the West Indies that the government pays in economic costs. These are the tuition fees. This is the cost of the reintroduction of the fees. This is the current enrollment. It goes to the Ministry of Finance for comment. The Ministry of Finance comments. It comes to Cabinet. Cabinet decides on the issue based on the Cabinet paper. Similarly, the repeal of the NSRL, the Chief Parliamentary Council will draft the bill that says this bill is no longer whatever. If I need to be able to introduce taxes, the Minister of Finance can do a statement from the floor of Parliament such that any announcement regarding the provision of taxes becomes law, and we have 4 months within which the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act to bring the actual bill that makes that law sustainable to the past. Right. Trust me, my dear, when I say to you that we know how to govern, I have 10 members of Parliament, 10 candidates, who have served already in government, and I have equally 21s who are versed in the world of work, who are accomplished people. I look forward to people being able to say she was right when she was talking about it, because I know that people are doubtful, and after a decade of people saying that this can happen and that can happen and this can happen, that Barbadians are weary and they are frightened to believe again. Well, you know, I've always said time and God shall always be on our side, and I'm prepared to wait and erase the doubts with performance.
I want to zero in then on the NSRL, where a lot of people are saying it's fine for it to be abolished at the legislative level. But then let's move on now to the level of the mercantile class and they passing on any savings to the consumer?
We've said very clearly that we are going to be very, very clear with the private sector and the labor movement, the social partnership, that we will not agree on any gouging that remains thereafter, after the repeal of that tax. I think all of us agree that the tax, government needs revenue, yes, but the tax is a bad tax. No three people agree on its application. It's had a distortionary impact on taxes. But in addition to that, the NSRL is going to literally, it's been a burden that has literally saw prices in this country spike. We will find ways of being able to ensure that we can go about it. The manifesto speaks to how we will pay for it. We've talked about the reprofiling of debt. I've given the examples all the time that sometimes people need elbow room fiscally. We see it with households. You are earning $1,500 a month. Your debt payments are $1,000, but your rent or mortgage is $700. Your food bill is $300. You can't make ends meet. What is your immediate need? Your immediate need is food and paying rent. So you have to go back to the bank or go back to the credit union and say, look, I know I only have 2 more years on this debt, but I'm prepared to carry it for 5 years if you bring it down to $500-600 a month. And that gives you the fiscal space. The key with reprofiling is this, however, that if we reprofile any debt, we have to be prepared to continue to do the things to help make Barbados more efficient and more competitive. And that's where the conversation comes with the country. And that's the conversation that we say has to be a national conversation and not simply 30 people in a parliament making decisions and resulting in plans that fail one after the other, as has happened in the last 8 years.
These are also emotionally charged times on a national level. So you say reprofiling debt, and somebody hears, oh, we're going to the IMF. So I have to ask you, are we going to the IMF?
I said already that I'm not ruling it out. The reality is that we don't know what we're going to find. But we do know that the International Monetary Fund was established for crises such as this with respect to balance of payments or with respect to our reserves that Barbados is currently having. And if we have to go there, we'll go there. If we do go there, however, it will not be without a clue in mind as to what we want to do. It is that national conversation as to where we can go and what the options are. Because we are clear on one thing. We are not going to devalue the Barbados dollar. Okay. We believe that there are no goods that we export that will become more affordable or more competitive. We believe that there are no services that will become more competitive. In tourism, we don't compete on the basis of price. We compete on the basis of quality. That's why sewage on the South Coast. That's why potholes. That's why an inefficient hospital will hurt our tourism sector as much as it is hurting Barbadians. So we're very clear that whatever is legal, whatever is moral, shall be done to save this country's economic stability and future.
If you don't know, you just said it, if you don't know what you are going to find, then why should I be confident that you can give me this?
Because we have an idea of what the base of what we're going to find. We're saying that what we don't know that will make it worse is the level of arrears. How much money the government owes the University of the West Indies? We've heard 200 million. Is it that or more? How much money does the government owe UCAL? We've heard 16 million. Is it that or more? How much money does the government owe SBRC, Sustainable Barbados Recycling Center, for the garbage that's being sent up there? And I can go on and on and on, because regrettably, this government has used the building up of arrears as a form of financing for its programs over the course of the last few years. So whatever they say the deficit is, and we've already learned from the governor of the central bank in his last report, that deficit has not come down this year as they projected. And I'm glad that he's also spoken frankly, because they were projecting that the deficit would come down on the basis of one-off sales rather than as a result of a sustainable pattern. But whatever it is, we fear that it may be worse, because of the failure of the government to be frank about the building up of the arrears, which we know has happened.
Public sector layoffs.
Public sector layoffs. It's not, I believe, firmly that Labour cannot be on the front line of any adjustment. Can I say that there will never be a job loss in Barbados? No, I can't. And nobody can. And anybody who tries to tell the public that is a liar. But what I do know is that we will not put people on the front line as it was done in 1991. We've told you that the reprofiling is going to give us the fiscal space to be able to make decisions. And our problem with the government's layoffs in 2014 is that they literally said, oh, let's lay off 4,000 people. And they took them from hither, thither, and yonder. So they left no institution of government fit to deliver the services or goods that they were supposed to deliver. If we are going to have a conversation about the kind of government that we want, it cannot be on the basis that we want to get rid of people because we need fiscal space. Not in that, not going to do that. And this has to be a national conversation. But we believe that we can get at least $400 million in terms of our reprofiling, and that will give us the space to go about a very credible, methodical and strong fixing of government in a way that makes sense for everybody.
It's been a bruising last 10 days into 2 weeks. You could almost say in true Charles Dickens fashion, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. On the BLP platform, from national meetings, from even to spot meetings to your major events, you've drawn tens of thousands of supporters. On an almost individual and personal level, you've taken a beating. Let me stop there and ask you your comments on my assessment of it. Best of times, worst of times?
Maybe, yeah, probably, but that's life. That's life, and we have to go on, you know, and that we shall.
I want to stick with the, believe it or not, the worst of times and ask you some questions.
Am I surprised at that? No.
And ask you some questions that I think everybody wants to ask. And don't forget, we'll also be taking questions from you via our feed, so you can actually begin posting, and we'll use a few of them. Benedict Peters.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with that scenario.
What happened?
You tell me. Did you?
Do
you know Benedict Peters?
I met Benedict Peters twice. I met him, maybe, I don't even know, 4 years ago. And then he was back here maybe about 2 years ago with his family. On the second occasion, I think the first time he was only here for the day through mutual acquaintances. I went to school at the London School of Economics. And I went to school with a lot of people from Asia and Africa, and people come through here all of the time over the course of the last 30 years. The second time that I met Mr. Peters, he was staying at the Hilton. His family was here. He wanted to meet and say hi again and to discuss. He was looking at doing some things in the region, and that's it. The notion that Benedict Peters is a financier of the Barbados Labour Party is a nonsense. Secondly, the notion that Benedict Peters and Boko Haram is financing a woman is even more nonsense, because anybody who knows anything about Boko Haram knows that they are against the advancement of girls and women, whether it is in education or in any other thing that they do. So those who want to construct fake news should at least make sure that they get the facts right.
Mm-hmm. The LEC.
That's lose every case. That's the only LEC I know.
LEC. I think that has captured the, I don't want to say imagination, but the attention of the country, and has divided opinion down lines.
I have addressed this in the past, and I said it. The law is very clear. There were a number of us who went to England to study. We had to comply with a date with respect to entering a course of study. Under the Legal Profession Act, it said that if you were literally registered in a course of study in England before the 31st of December 1984, that you were you did not have to do Heward Law School or Norman Manley Law School, and hence the LEC. So you didn't need an LEC to practice. You know, I don't want to be invidious. Let me leave it at that, because this is an issue that has only been given legs by a few people who want to make it seem, because the law is as clear as possible as to what is required to practice law in this country. The Legal Profession Act has it there set out. I became a member of Middle Temple on the 6th of August 1984, and I must say that I became a member of Middle Temple on the recommendation of no less a person than Errol Barrow and Henry Ford. And I find it curious that Errol Barrow's party would now want to so disregard the law because there's nothing else to attack on. So for me, it's par for the course. Regrettably, this type of politics is a distraction, is intended to be a distraction from the real issues of the day. If the kind of fervor that has gone in the LEC went in fixing buses, or went in getting garbage trucks fixed, or went in fixing the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, I would feel honored, because it would mean that this government was at least trying. But this complete obsession with a reinterpretation of the law, and the thing about law and economics is subject to opinion. It's not like science where you see X and Y, but law and opinion, this is my opinion, that is your opinion. So as long as you can talk, you're going to get an audience.
Okay.
But does it withstand scrutiny? No.
What it has done, however, and other insinuations and rumors, is creating the minds of some that you are a child of privilege and entitlement. How do you respond to that?
They obviously never saw me as I was growing up. I have no doubt that I have been blessed by having more than a lot. But privilege and entitlement is not one of those things that has ever been associated. Everything I have, I've had to work for. Let's start with my political career. I started with a defeat. It didn't start with a victory. Let's start with my leadership of the Labour Party. It started with being taken down publicly in a manner that others may consider humiliating. Let's start with my growing up. My parents did not indulge us. There was no such thing as pocket money. There was no such thing as being taken up and driven wherever you want to go. There was no such thing as family vacations, going to Disney World. Nothing so. You wanted to go to the Vista, you walk down the road and you catch a bypass bus and you go. If you come back and it's dark, they'll come down only because the hill had no lights. I worked at nights from early. As in my first job, my brother worked at what is now Massey Supercenter packing bags, because if you wanted things, you had to work for it. I used to make rotis and sell until one day I got an order for 200 and I said never again, because my arms hurt me for about 3 days after, and it was dal puri at that. It wasn't flat. So I mean, I found things to do. That's how I got into crop over band management. That's how I got into having stalls with Piley down at Piley's place in Brighton with Dove Boy, as he then was, Ivan Hope. And so I've always had to work for what I want. Did we start with more, and were we blessed with exposure and the ability never to have to worry about food or education? Of course I had that blessing. And that's why I work so hard to make sure, and I feel strongly that no mother, no father should ever have to choose which child should be educated. And I'm strong on that. Let us make other decisions about sacrifice, but not this. This is too fundamental to a child's ability to survive and succeed in life.
The unity of the party, because there are still some lingering doubts that a group of people who would have had their differences a year ago, 2 years ago, would have come together to present the picture that we see on platforms across this country during the campaign.
Well, let's put it, you really can't mock and play mock sport at certain things. There's a genuine coming together. Look, families have difficulties. This family called the Barbados Labour Party had difficulties. And there were those who tried to continue to cause strife. It has not worked. We went through some frank discussions. We've gone through some rebuilding. And what's beautiful about it is that this is now 2.5 years. Everybody says a year, like if it was last year. It is 2.5 years that we have literally had no issue. And I want to say, and I keep making the point, that I have a team that I really believe all of us have had to make adjustments in recognition that we have a wider duty and a deeper duty to the country. And I am really, truly grateful to my team for that. Will they all agree on everything? No, they won't. We're not yes people. But there's a core set of values that I believe that we've all agreed that we will respect as we seek to build the institution to allow it to build the best Barbados that we can with the population of Barbados.
We're going to go online. Would government consider removing tax and duties for items we need to purchase in order to protect our homes in case of hurricanes, things like shutters, roof straps, generators, etc.?
We're going to review all of that. What I can tell you is that there will be a great emphasis on our preparedness for disasters and to be able to deal with climate change. As to what the exact duties are on shutters and various things, I can't tell you from where I sit today, but I do know that in our manifesto we talk about literally a rapid roof replacement program, because we're going to pay for a disaster either before or after. Okay. And we believe that if we pay for it before, it is cheaper to the individual. Whether we use tax incentives, whether we use credits, or whether we go to the Green Energy Fund in South Korea to be able to help us manage through grants the adaptation that has to be done, particularly for the vulnerable part of the population, that's something that we will do once we get in and review what the options are. We've been out of government for 10 years, and I don't want to speak out of turn on certain issues because I take my word seriously.
Another question from the chat had to do with our reliance on fossil fuels, and will we be encouraged to get off the grid and use alternative energy, and how will government help?
Well, we've said already that we want to aim to have a fossil fuel free economy as far as possible by 2030. That's going to mean that we're going to have, as a matter of urgency, within the first 2 months to sit down with the Light and Power, sit down with the alternative energy providers, sit down and look at what the framework is and the remit of the FTC. I know that this government promised much, but then rolled back on a number of the promises with respect to fees and with respect to capacity. We are setting a policy, and to that extent the FTC regulators have to operate within that new policy framework, because we have less than 12 years to be able to achieve that objective.
Another one from the stream had to do with communication, and whether should you form the next government, what would be your methods for communicating with the public? Because one of the oft-repeated criticisms of the current administration was the apparent alleged lack of communication.
Well, on the platform I've been saying it all the time. Look, if you want to move a country and a people, we got to talk. We have to talk with them, and by the way, not at them. And we have to be able to say, look, we're going down this road. And I always remember Tom Adams, within the first few months when he realized that the situation was far more acute than they imagined when they became the government, he said to the country, tighten your belt, I say. And he asked people to tighten the belt some notches. And Barbadians responded. If we talk our people through our issues, I have every confidence that our people will respond. So communication is going to be critical, not just on the difficult issues or the economic issues, but on all. Our manifesto also speaks to a new form of governance, because we don't believe that you can educate people and then treat them as if they don't have any education. So we have people who want to engage beyond a vote every 5 years. And to that extent, a lot of communication is going to be premised on public education as well, sharing information with people such that the country can make informed decisions.
I've heard you mention in the past the possibility of fixed term representation. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that's one of the ones that we have to go to the country on. I am a firm believer in fixed terms. I'm also a firm believer in term limits. I feel that for the very reason I just said, we educate our people. There is more than enough people out there willing and capable to serve in this country. The party isn't quite with me yet. These things happen. But we've agreed that we're going to go to the country on it and let the country decide on the issue of fixed term limits and fixed terms and also term limits, as well as some other issues surrounding parliamentary reform. Okay. We haven't had major parliamentary reform since 1971, when we changed from double member to single member constituencies. And there's a school of thought that we need to We need to look at how we govern ourselves, but that's a conversation, including the People's Assemblies, which we are recommending that we have a conversation with the country on, because we feel that people need to have a greater say beyond voting every 5 years, or even the people's initiatives, which will allow you, if you have and feel strongly about something and you have enough signatures, as happens in the House of Commons in England now, you can literally, by getting the requisite number of signatures, get people to come and literally sign, and Parliament has to debate it. And referenda, of course.
Right. Let's go outside of Barbados and look at our relationship, our influence, and our work with CARICOM, the body of CARICOM, and of course our CARICOM brothers and sisters. And there is a school of thought that in recent years we have not been as vibrant, as strident, as supportive of CARICOM as we could have.
It's been a reality. Barbados has abdicated its leadership in the CARICOM single market and single economy, the area for which we have responsibility over the course of the last decade. We were strong before that, and we need to take back up leadership. One of the things that will land for Barbados to participate in as a state in the next few weeks is the Golding Report out of Jamaica, which has basically said, look, to Jamaicans and to the Jamaican government, that this thing called CSME has not literally been functioning in the way in which it has supposed to be. And unless we get it right, and unless it starts to function, and unless the built-in agenda is adhered to, Jamaica may want to consider whether it should not extricate itself. We need to do what we have to do to preserve the integrity and the wholeness of the CSME. The Barbados Labour Party, in its constitution, is one of the few parties that has the pursuit of Caribbean integration as a critical tenet, and it does so because we recognize that a country that is 270,000 will always be constrained in the delivery of services and in the competitiveness of its economy and its stability without access to a wider market. The CSME gives us access to that wider market, and quite frankly, the ability to have functional cooperation regionally means that we don't have to build out those institutions on our own in this country, which would be a greater cost to us, and it would mean that it would be money diverted from other things that we would want to do for our citizens. So we are a strong believer that we must step back up to the plate there. Regrettably, the Prime Minister last night delivered himself of remarks that actually shocked me. And I said to myself, how much worse can it get now? Because with his determination that should they win the government, they would want to come out of the Caribbean Court of Justice, I'm horrified. And I'm horrified because for the first time, it is becoming clear that there is a deep division philosophically between the two parties in a way that Barbados has never really seen in most of its independence, post-independence movement. So, you know, it's something we're going to have to discuss. But you can't say you want to leave a court system and come only to an internal system where the Prime Minister has the right to appoint judges simply because you feel that the court has disrespected you. And what has the court said? It hasn't disrespected Barbados. The court has said, look, judges in Barbados are taking too long to deliver judgments. That's not disrespect. That's a reflection of the truth, and in fact a breach of our constitution, which requires that we deliver due access to justice for our citizens.
I'm going to go back, speaking of the stream,
somebody ask the question.
Is asking the question. Carolyn is asking about our judicial system is inefficient at best. Someone is years on remand at the taxpayer's expense, comes before the court and gets probation, or there is no case to answer. It is everyone's civil right to a fair and speedy trial. They're referring to specifically, but I also want to look in general at the sluggish way
let's deal with it.
Things operate in the country.
Look, in our manifesto, we talk about mission critical stuff, our urgent agenda. And one of the things in the urgent agenda is literally addressing the fact that we have to literally get on top of these backlogs. You have 10,000 cases, criminal cases that are on a backlog. You can't have that. And we have to literally, we're going to have to appoint 2 additional judges, and we're going to have to literally make sure that the court system can go through it. and prioritize the serious crimes, the murders, the rapes, the burglaries, the robberies, the serious crimes. But what you can't have is a court system that takes forever to be able to literally resolve matters. We commit in the main manifesto too that we want to have a court system that says that, look, anybody charged with serious offences should come before the court at first instance within 9 months, and thereafter each appellate process should be no more than 6 months. And we mean to the Court of Appeal, and yes, we do mean to the Caribbean Court of Justice, because we believe that there is benefit in having that external appellate system from the Caribbean. And of course, we were the ones that helped establish it. And I have every confidence in the quality of judges, the independence of the judges. The Barbados Prime Minister does not appoint the judges to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And the President of the Court is appointed by the unanimous decision of all of the heads of government. So it is insulated from the worries that people may have that your domestic court system may not.
I want to come back to the manifesto and back to some platform pleasures, and I want to coach it like this. Should you be successful at the polls on Thursday, from Friday morning, based on your rhetoric and projections and promises on the platforms, that things are going to begin to look up. So let's look at some basic issues that I think every Barbadian has. Collection of garbage.
That is going to take time because we got to get trucks, and we got to work with the private sector until we get trucks. But it is a priority, and the decisions will be made in the next week, within a week of government, to be able to deal with this issue.
Now, I'm going to pause here and go for one from the stream. My question to Mia: I struggle to see how the increase of non-contributory pensions will not have an adverse effect on the next generation. It has been mentioned by many a scholar that we are not producing as many children as years gone by, and therefore less contributions to the NIS fund. Can you explain the overall intent?
Well, they're two separate things. The non-contributory pensions are carried not by the NIS, but is carried by the consolidated fund. And we've costed that out. That's about $18 million. And we believe that it is critical because pensions have increased by 24%, but prices have increased in the last decade, same time period, by almost 50%. In addition, pensioners have had to take on additional things for which they did not have to pay before, like aspects of the medication policy under the drug service reforms. With respect to the issue of whether we have sufficient people to support our national insurance scheme, the actual reviews suggest that we have, but by the same token, you make adjustments based on the actual reviews, and every 3 years there's an actual review that allows us to plan. So we're always in a position to do so. I think the bigger issue is this: do we need to have a review of our population size? Does Barbados need a population commission? And that's a long-term planning thing. That's something that is not sexy, but those things may have to be done once you have a functioning government that is serious about development.
All right, so garbage, we took a question from the stream. The South Coast sewage crisis.
Immediately. Look,
what can be done immediately?
First of all, we need to take stock as to where we are. And I trust and pray that the Barbados Water Authority will have briefs ready to allow us to do so. I've already said to the public that we are prepared to call in some of our international friends, like the Canadians, like others, and to have a decision and a determination as to how best they can help. We've said from the beginning that we recognize that we need to work out where the blockages are, and if that means breaking the road to dig, we have to dig. At the same time, we are conscious that engineers were telling us from as far back as December last year that you needed an alternative outfall going beyond the banks, the bank reefs. That has not been done, but yet I'm now hearing that after the digging of these deep injection wells, each of which have cost, I assume in the vicinity of about $2 million, which is horrendous. And rather than waiting to dig one and see if it works, we've dug and committed to digging all 4 and possibly more. That in spite of all of that, they're now talking that they have to do the outfall. And the size pipes that I'm hearing being bandied about in terms of a 12-inch pipe doesn't make any sense at all. So this is going to engage our attention from day one, and I'm going to be taking briefs on it should we constitute the government come Friday morning, even before the full settlement of the structure of all aspects of government because we don't have any time to waste.
Right.
We think that it is negatively affecting future bookings for the country, and we need to pull it back and then tell the story that Barbados is ready again to be able to welcome people in a hospitable and clean and friendly environment.
The ease and speed of doing business with the public service, applying for licenses and permits, getting permissions, even accident and emergency records.
Critical part of the
We're
manifesto.
tired, fed up.
Yeah, and it's going to take time. I mean, every year we're going to knock down 3 or 4 areas. We've set ourselves that target. Look, Barbados and India were the first 2 countries to be colonized by the British. And a lot of our institutions are 19th century and early 20th century. We've held on to these institutions and these systems for dear life. Our police force is the 3rd oldest in the Commonwealth, 1838. Our psychiatric hospital was built in the 1870s. Our post office is the 1850s. And we have, right now, to bring all of these institutions and systems and processes into the modern day. And then we need to use this. We have an analog government in a digital 21st century. Cannot work.
Another question, playing right into what we were just discussing. What role do you see cryptocurrencies playing in the economy? Are we looking into using this as a means of assisting Barbados out of debt?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to be able to create a regulatory framework to allow us to determine how best we're going to interact with cryptocurrencies. And there's a lot of division on it, but what we have settled on in the manifesto is that we will create a regulatory sandbox to allow us to be able to allow those who want to innovate to have that space where innovation is possible. With respect to the actual Barbados dollar, not cryptocurrencies, we do recognize that we do need to go digital, and we will be working with some of the entities to be able to make it happen, because the way how people treat to money and deal with money has changed. And if Barbados is going to make itself that country in the world which wants to attract people, then we have to innovate. So moving to a digital currency will be early on. With respect to the cryptocurrencies, there are aspects of it that we're going to still have to discuss, but we're going to create the regulatory framework through the sandbox regime.
You have swept your supporters, whether the ones in red or not, along on an almost euphoria of the promise of a better Barbados. And then you said it's not going to happen overnight. It can't happen overnight. How are you going to keep fueling my expectations so that I don't get jaded and disappointed that you've promised all these things and you've not delivered?
Communication.
Because almost childlike, based on what you and your candidates have given us from the platform, we expect a brighter sun, should you win the government, a brighter sun from Friday, and things will,
I've been very
get
clear.
better.
I've been very clear, Carol. I say it's not going to change overnight, but it's going to get better. And we're going to turn the corner. To begin with, we're going to start being honest with our people. This government has not been honest with the people of Barbados. Secondly, we're going to respect the institutions that we have, like not talking about coming out of the Caribbean Court of Justice because it tells you something different that you don't want to hear, or having CBC operate as a propaganda arm. And those who said that it happened before, I want to repudiate it and reject it. I remember David Thompson sitting down on People's Business for an hour being interviewed by Harold Hoyt and Peter Wickham before he won the government as leader of the opposition. I remember every Saturday and every Friday night DLP lunchtime lectures being shown on CBC TV. I remember every Monday night DLP political meetings being shown on CBC TV. Yesterday, there was supposed to be an interview session on CBC with all of the parties. We sent Liz Thompson as our representative. It was to discuss manifestos. Mr. Derek Allen was to turn up. All of a sudden, he didn't turn up. The other parties had representatives there. They sat down there for 2.5 hours. And at the end of it, they were then told, oh, we're cancelling this because nobody's coming from the Democratic Labour Party. Now, you cannot have a national broadcast entity. And I've gone to hold a press conference or anything on these things, but it irks me because our democratic institutions are being literally balkanized, and the tribal instincts have literally taken over rather than allowing the institutions to function. There's a book called How Democracies Die, and I want Barbadians to go and buy it. because I believe that this government has literally put the greatest threat to the stability of our democracy that any government has done since independence. And one of the problems that I have is that because Barbadians are by nature long-suffering, we've seen a lot of it happen. When I say turn the corner, the first thing I have to do is to give the country the assurance that we are not trying to run political institutions as a country, or a country as a political institution, rather. Secondly, that we are going to get the basics right. We're going to get garbage collection and put it at the top of the list. Buses working, hospital and A&E working, students back into school. There are other things that we can do, but we don't need to use tax and spend powers. We have other powers to legislate, like reverse mortgages. If we provide a legislative framework for reverse mortgages, there are a lot of pensioners who immediately will have access to 20, 30, 40, 50,000 as equity in their house, and that immediately will fuel economic activity because they want it to fix a leaking roof or to fix tires that have blown or whatever. And we've done that not by taxing and spending, but through legislation.
Okay. I did not support you. Wasn't one of the Red Brigade. Wasn't, on the Red campaign trail. And the Barbados Labour Party wins the government. And we all know it's like one of the elephants in the room that when governments change, there is the expectation that some will go home, some will be marginalized, simply because of your political affiliation.
You know me?
Your comments on that.
You know me?
You tell me.
For anybody who knows me, knows that if the one thing that has been my weakness, and it was the basis upon which people moved me, is that I'm not tribal enough. Okay? By the same token, I am not going to take a 6 for a 9. And if you have people who have been put in jobs who are not working, then that's a matter for the boards or for the relevant institutions to deal with. But I'm not going to literally kick or torment somebody purely because of the color shirt they wear or the political persuasion they are. That's not me. And I feel strongly that we have to build back this Barbados. Problem with this government is that they use politics to make every single decision, and that's why the institutions that we have are not functioning properly. And we have literally to stabilize this country and let all good Barbadians who are prepared to put Barbados first and who are prepared to work come forward. So the measure of what will happen depends on people's performance.
Going to the stream, what would be the government's position on reducing the taxes added on to airline tickets, especially to increase travel and trade throughout the region?
Difficult one. I'm not going to commit to anything so without seeing the numbers. I'm being straight.
Corruption was another question posed in the stream. What are you going to do to, what is the plan going forward to address the corruption that would have added tremendously to crippling this country's economy?
I'm glad the question has been phrased in that way, because people very often see corruption as a standalone item without realizing for every dollar that has been spent in corruption, it's a dollar taken away from buying buses or fixing the hospital or buying prescription drugs, etc. We have said clearly, one, that the Integrity Commission bill will go to Parliament on the first working day of Parliament. That too stands. We've had comments. It's been out there since November. We've had comments. We're doing some tweaking to it. Secondly, I've said, and I mean it, that the appointment of a cabinet will be premised on those who are prepared to declare their assets. And that is the condition for service. And until such time as the Integrity Commission is formed, those declaration of assets will be held in escrow to be handed over to the Integrity Commission within hopefully 2-3 months of getting one functioning in this country. This is too serious an issue for us. I keep telling a story from a little child that some people laugh at, that when I was 6 or 7 years old, I asked my grandmother. My mother's mother was from Grenada. And I asked her, I said, Granny, what's babal? She said, why you asking me that? I said, well, what's babal? She said, don't worry about that. That's something, and forgive my Trinidadian friends, please forgive me. That's something that you hear about in Trinidad, not Barbados. Now, 40 years ago, there was a sense in which that corruption was not an issue, that the word babal, or Nigerians call it dash, or whatever else, was nothing that we needed a dedicated word for in Barbados. It hurts me that there is a view domestically and abroad that institutions and people in Barbados are corrupt. We need to deal with it because Barbados is too small to be taken over by the cancer of corruption.
Do you intend then?
In high and in low places. Because we also believe, because it's sexy to believe that it's only about corruption in high places, but corruption at all levels is corruption. And let me say this, it takes two hands to clap.
Do you intend then to hold your cabinet and MPs?
I think I just said that I intend to hold from the cabinet to the vendors, from the private sector to the public sector. I intend to hold everybody responsible. Look, we just have to be fair to each other. We can live a good life in this country. There's more than enough for everybody. There's more than enough bounty to go around after we do the little adjustment that we have to do. But we got to be fair.
All right.
And transparent.
Come back to some personal and pointed areas now. The notion that some express that you are on this quest for leadership. This is why you're in this, because you want to be Prime Minister. How do you respond?
I just find the whole thing curious. David Thompson in 2007 December had a meeting in Beckles Road. I will never forget it. And he spent the first 15 minutes of that meeting making the point that every opposition leader who has served any length of time in Barbados and that had a good prospect to become a leader in government has been accused of being power hungry or being anxious for power. So that I want members of the public to contextualize the allegation in the proper context, that this is what almost every other generation has gone through, par for the course. As to leadership, I've never seen myself as power hungry. Power doesn't drive me. Doing things to make a difference for people and being impatient when things don't happen, and I think you've worked with me and you know it, if I feel this is the task at hand, do not put off to tomorrow what we can do today. Let's get it done. Inspiring people to want to believe that they can move to a better level and to a higher purpose, if that is something that reflects being power hungry, then I plead guilty to that. I feel that leadership is something we do at every level of the society, in families, in communities, in churches, even linemen. You see, when people linemen, there's got one person who's determined where they're going to. That happens naturally, and some people have instincts of leadership, some don't. But I would not describe myself as power hungry. I try and I pray every day, including today, to remain humble, for discernment, to be empathetic, to be tolerant. And those things mean a lot to me. And anybody who knows me knows that if you want to get on the wrong side of me, treat people badly. If you want to get on the wrong side of me, be offensive to people in the manner in which you deal with them. I fundamentally believe in fairness. I fundamentally believe in giving people opportunity. And I will always see in a glass as and call it half full, as opposed to half empty, because I believe that every day affords us the opportunity of becoming better at who we are. When you asked me at the beginning, how was the campaign going? I said, good, but I really think that there are a few things that we can do better. And that's because I believe that you have to continue to pursue perfection. But equally, I am conscious that the pursuit of perfection can sometimes be the obstacle to progress. And that you have to move along a people in a country, and you don't always get perfection. And A is not only 100%, and A is 80% and up.
Now, let's talk about social media. Because this is clearly the first election, general election, that would have been as impacted by social media.
For real.
And pros and cons. The pros would obviously be the main one, that you can immediately get information out to millions and millions of people. The cons are they only have one chance to get it right. Another con is that there isn't a lot of filter to determine what is fact and what is fiction, hence the term fake news. How have you been able to harness the cons and harness the pros and deal with the cons in this campaign?
Well, I've been blessed with a very good team, and I want to thank them, and I mean both technically and content-wise. I always try to do some myself because I believe in authenticity and sincerity, and I think people know my voice because my voice is...
Let's stop there. Let's talk about this voice, though. Let's talk about this voice. Another piece of campaign fodder. The lady with the deep voice. Have you always had this deep voice?
My mother has a deep voice. My sister has a deep voice. My sister's out there. If you want her to come and talk to me because you don't believe me, let her. She's coming from Australia 2 days ago. It's a family affliction, if you want to call it that. But no, and it's worse now because I have had the flu the last 3-4 days. And I'm taking a number of concoctions, and I'm conscious that when I leave you here tonight, I have 5 meetings to go and speak at tonight again. So it's par for the course. Look, Carol, you don't take on them things. Last night, what I told the people in the platform at the youth rally, they got tall men and short men. They got tall women and short women. They got women with high-pitched voices and women with deep voices. They got men with high-pitched voices and men with deep voices. There were people who used to talk about how David used to run, and mimic. I have never been a politician who mimics people's physical things. I abhor it. People who come talking about the Prime Minister's physical features, I curse them. I don't support it.
Including your own?
Including my own.
Yes.
And they know how I feel about it. But I'm also conscious that that's something that not Barbadians, people across the world, people like to play the person and not the ball. Okay? And I think it's cruel. I don't subscribe to it.
But what about when the same barometer is used against you, and they comment?
Can't define me.
Okay.
I don't lease out no space
You're
in my
here,
head. I do not lease out no space in my head to nobody. Okay. My head belongs to me. You understand? I'm happy with who I am. Okay. There are those who tell me, "Oh, get rid of the gray hair." It's still there. There are those who tell me, "Straighten the hair." I like my hair so. I like to feel my hair. You understand? And those who don't like it, mercifully, it's not theirs. You understand? And I've learned that if you want to anger a black woman, talk about hair.
Back to social media and your way of, the party's way of using it to its benefit.
Social media has been the blessing for us for this campaign. You heard me refer to the fact of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation earlier, literally denying us access. Last annual conference, Jerome Walcott went with a check to buy the time that they gave the Prime Minister free of cost, or if not free of cost, free of paying, because I'm told that the Democratic Labour Party owes the CBC over $100,000. And they carried his speech live. They refused to carry ours. Now, I haven't cried about these things, and the public hasn't heard me repeating them over and over. We just got on with the job. Mercifully, we live in a time where Facebook Live became a reality, and YouTube allowed you to upload videos. So every night, we have thousands of people following us. And it's amazing. There was a cock-up yesterday with the police telling us we couldn't set up in one area, and the commissioner then coming back in the morning and apologizing and saying, yes, we can. And I thank the commissioner for his forthright behavior, because he really has been very fair to us. Up to 1:30, 2 o'clock, we didn't know whether we would have a meeting. Social media allowed us not only to have a meeting, but to have a bumper crowd, and then to have thousands of people watching it. So it's been a blessing. By the same token, as you correctly said, it's unforgiving. If I decide now that I want to sneeze too hard, I can't pull it back because it's gone out in real time. So it imposes a discipline on you, which is good. In my view, it requires authenticity. You can't make it up and you can't be mock about it because people see through it. So I'm glad about it. But now, as a taker of information, you have to check everything, because you have to make sure that what has been posted is in fact real. And there have been many a time when you've seen something come up and you say, wow. And you say, you know what? Put it down. Let me get a second and a third verifier on that.
The other thing about it, though, is that if you follow it closely, you see things about yourself that make you go, wow. How do you deal with that? And I want to frame that question within the context again of the last week, and the whole issue of the alleged tax waiver and all of that, and then watching the press conference with Roger Ford and your dad.
I didn't watch it.
I mean, you know.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
I haven't watched any of the press conferences. I never watched the press conferences of Owen Arthur in 2009 or 2014 or this week. I haven't watched the one with my father.
Why not?
No, it's too painful. Not going to watch it. Look, my father has always been the kind of man who doesn't get involved. I think my father's been to one public meeting in my 29 years as a politician, and that was the manifesto meeting in 2013 at Eagle Hall. That's the only public meeting. From the time he left politics and from the time he determined that he was serving as a judicial officer, that was the end of it for him. He comes from that school that separates politics and the judiciary. Secondly, I know him to be a man, he doesn't talk about his name, he's not interested in that kind of behavior. And the greatest pain of this campaign for me has been the extent to which people felt that if they can't get at me, then they're going to get at my family. And I suppose that that's the case of all politicians. That's why it was a hard task even for me to assemble this team, because there were a number of people who I went to who said, I'm not interested, especially in small island politics. Small island politics is too personal, is too unforgiving, is too hard on families. I've seen children suffer from it on both sides. But as I said, I am not participating. It takes two hands to clap. Those who expect that I will get up and attack people personally in a parliament going forward in a budget debate, look for somebody else. I've not come to public life to do that. Those who expect that, as Mr. Pandey said, that politics got its own morality, find somebody else. That is not what Amor Mottley is about. That's not what I'm about. Will I argue strongly with you? Of course I will. But on the facts. Not with respect to your family, not with respect to your physical appearance. It's nothing to do with this. And you know, like, he who feels it knows it, she who feels it knows it. I am not going there. I know how difficult it is to inspire people to come forward to public life in a small society such as ours, and won't do it. I mean, that is why certain people felt that I wasn't hard enough on David Thompson. It wasn't that. I was literally, when David Thompson told us in the estimates of 2009 that our deficit would be 5%, we went toe-to-toe on it. And I predicted then, and I said, no, it's going to be 8 to 8.5%, and it's going to literally unravel this country's economy, and it is going to unravel the institutions and businesses of this country. But what they wanted was a different kind of pecan. Leave that for Gabby and Gypsy and Colin Spencer and Romeo, who having fun today.
Now, the gender issue. Do you think you are under greater scrutiny? A different kind of scrutiny and assessment? Because you are
both
female leader of a political party?
Both.
In a general election?
Both. I mean, I am going to wear a sweater tonight that I wore 10 days ago. Everybody else told me, you can't wear that again because you had it on 10 days ago. Watch me. You understand? What nonsense is this? To wear a piece of clothes once because you're a woman, because somebody can tell you that you wore it already. You know, that's for those who in Hollywood. That's for those who on stage. I am doing a job. That's not who I am. Now, secondly, men get away with it naturally. Because a man can wear the same suit, what, 2-3
Forever.
days in a row, and change the shirt and the tie, and that's it. Women don't have that luxury. So while I say, and I'm making noise about the sweater tonight because I'm cold and I'm not feeling the greatest, I do understand that it's going to be a little difficult for me to wear the same dress to Parliament every week, or the same dress to each Remembrance Day parade. They say she had on that last Remembrance Day. So you have to give and take. Secondly, the hair issue. Nobody tells a man if he got a bad haircut, but they can tell a woman if she have a bad hair. And then there are just other things. I never thought the fact that I was a woman was ever an issue when I entered public life 29 years ago. But I have learned, and I learned very quickly, that the fact that I'm a woman does influence how people treat to you and how people speak to you and what people expect of you. But I've never allowed my response to be determined by the fact that I'm a woman.
Still with gender and a female leader, win, lose or draw, let's talk about at the level of party, leading a parliamentary group that is largely male. You've got, I think, 24 males, 23 males,
24.
Six females.
Yeah, but we got a lot of females now. When I first went in, it was me, Billy, and Liz. You know,
But you weren't leader.
No, wasn't leader, but by the same token, it's the interaction. It's the interaction over the lunch table. It's the interaction in the parliamentary party. Look, it's not the same, but the truth is that we get on well. And there are very few who will go outside of the parameters of what's acceptable. The comments about the female part have really more to do with how others see you from outside and appearance and the realities of what it takes for a woman in terms of keeping the house or doing other things. But it really hasn't been that much of an issue in terms of how we relate to each other as a parliamentary party.
Here's a question from left field. Have you thought about what you're going to be doing on Friday morning?
The first thing I would like to do is to get up and not have to rush in the bath and get ready for a meeting or something in the election. I would imagine that I'll have an hour as opposed to literally having 5 minutes between opening eyes and getting ready to do something, as has been the case for the last month. There's not been a lot of sleep. I want to listen to some music on Friday at some point, and whatever else I do. Some Jesse Royal. I got to meet him this week for the first time. He's a young, exciting Jamaican artist with some really fresh lyrics. And listen to some music that's not campaign music. You know.
A question from the stream from Shanice. There are many of us who graduate from UEK filled with degrees in microbiology, biology, biochemistry, and chemistry with no job opportunities. What measures will a BLP administration put into place to develop science and technology, not only in light of computer science, but in terms of research in the areas of animal and plant health, young people and opportunity?
Thank you, Shanice. I mean, you know, we are limiting our people so much. Barbados cannot export fish to Europe because we do not have sanitary and phytosanitary legislation, and we do not have the appropriate labs to do this stuff. So we're going to have labs established here that will allow us to do that, to deal with animal and plant health issues. Similarly, from as far back as 2007, when I did the 2007-2012 manufacturing strategic plan, when I was minister in charge of economic affairs at the time, we put in that document, and it's contained in the manifesto here again, a determination that Barbados can seek to attract research labs to be able to do research in a range of areas. It's always going to be difficult for us to compete on in manufacturing that's high volume, but in manufacturing that is high value, or in research areas, we have, in my view, tremendous opportunities. So the government needs to go out there and to work and to attract entities here that want to establish research labs, particularly in the area of science and technology and information technology.
Offering opportunities to
offering
people
opportunities like Shanice, and also for others who want to come here, because if we can create a center of excellence here in these areas, it's new activities that are not based on high volume manufacturing where we can never compete on the labor costs. We have to leverage the education that we've given to our children, and we have to recognize that people who want to develop, and it's in the manifesto, people who want to develop intellectual property, people who want to work in renewable energy, people who want to work in research, that Barbados needs to be a place where we attract people, not only our own, but people from wherever in the world, because the synergies that are created will make all the difference to creating opportunities for everybody.
The notion of a world without borders, thanks to technology, and therefore opening up, like a wealth of opportunities for our young people. Let's talk about the Youth Manifesto.
Yes, ma'am. Do you want to talk about it?
Once again, the idea of taking it from text to reality. It's a document that when you read it, you go, wow, the world is my oyster. But now you want to move it from ideal to implementation.
Procurement legislation, we say 5% of the contracts for young people. We will meet, the question is, do we mean under 30, under 35, under 40? We have to meet and consult across the board to determine what that threshold will be, but the new procurement legislation will be amended in order to be able to facilitate that. And what will be the types of proof that people have to bring forward that will satisfy a government. With respect to the 52-week calendar, we realize that a lot of our calendar that will drive our tourism product and our young people in sports and entertainment, etc., I am going to have a dedicated Ministry of Creative Economy. And that is because I believe that sports and culture are new planks for the productive sectors of this country. Look at Rihanna, look at Chantel, look at all of the people, look at Akila who was here the other day. These are the people who are carrying the Barbados flag high. These are the people, if we give them the support, literally, will be able to earn money in US dollars, by the way, that will be able to bring back here to help our reserve situation. So that there's so many different things. We talk about the Genius Award, $250,000 every quarter for a genius idea that allows us to be able to carry you and it to the next level, and $150,000 for school that will share between the school, the children, and the teachers once a year. It just requires making sure that we provide for it in the estimates and making sure that the line minister does the requisite policy directive to the public servants.
Okay. What if you lose, Mia?
Then the people of Barbados have made another choice, and I have to live with it. I mean, I keep saying that voting is like choosing what you want to eat. Last election, people decided that they wanted to eat lamb, or whatever you want to call it. This time they decide they may want to eat fish. This time they may decide they want to eat something else. Look, I have never viewed an electoral defeat as a definition of who I am. And remember, I told you I started my career in 1991 with an election defeat. So for me, electoral success or electoral defeat can never go to my head or to the essence of who I am, because it is a choice by people at a point in time that this is what we want for the next few years. For me personally, I will accept it. I've always argued that because of how my political career has evolved in the last 10 years, I do not believe that I can foist myself on the people of Barbados for a second time. And while most leaders will have two chances at electoral success, to get electoral success, I probably will have one because I'm a woman, two because of the fact that I was taken down at leadership already, and three, if that happens, it is well with my soul. I'm not going to stop being a Barbadian. I'm not going to stop being a Caribbean person. I'm not going to stop having a public profile or doing my best to make this place the best that we can have. The only time that's going to happen is when you're dead. And when you're dead, you're dead. You can't do it. At least not on this side of the earth, of the equation.
What if you win?
Then we get about to the task of constituting a government and starting to deliver for the people of this country. I've made it very clear that Monday is a working day from the day one. I'm under tremendous pressure on Friday because people are telling me that whether we declare it a holiday or not, that people are unlikely to settle down Friday morning. And we'll let the country know. I am conscious that Friday is payday in the public service, and that if we declare a public holiday, people will not have checks changed and people will not have access to money. And I must tell you that that concerns me, but I think that employers and everybody in the country would realize that even if business opens Friday morning, that we may want to close down half day.
Now, the healing of the nation, once again, regardless of election result, do you think that's absolutely necessary?
It's been ever present in my head from day one. That's why I do not believe in the kind of scorched earth comments in a campaign, in the run-up to the campaign. You haven't seen me do it because I'm conscious. Look, to govern well in this country, we are going to need 75 to 80% of the country moving in the same direction. Traditionally, 40% of the country support the Barbados Labour Party, 40% of the country support the Democratic Labour Party, and 20% swing. Even if we were to get every single independent, it would not be enough to turn this country around and to govern well. So I have to respond to people who support the Democratic Labour Party. I have to involve people who are involved with the Democratic Labour Party in the rebuilding of Barbados. And I make no apologies for saying so, because this is our country, and the notion that we can divide and separate and balkanize.
Now, you mentioned the Democratic Labour Party. You don't mention the other parties, any of the other parties.
I can equally refer to them too. UPP, Solutions, I can't remember the names of all, that's the truth. But yes, there's a youngster who's running against me who I think he's keen, and I respect him for that. And he and I have developed a very good relationship in spite of the fact that he's running against me. And I've always had that way, perhaps other than maybe with one candidate who shot me when she didn't shake my hand. But Leroy McLean ran against me in 1994 and 1999. I clearly remember, I think there were some issues with him getting a campaign office. And we said, no, rent the man the office, you can't do that. Leroy and I have always had a very cordial relationship because we competed an election. We're not enemies, you know. We're just on different sides of the fence electorally. So I have a very different approach to these things. That's the truth. And I hope that I can persuade more to adopt my approach, because I think if I do, more people will come to the fore in public life to want to serve.
Comments that you hear often: all politicians are the same. They
Nonsense.
get on the platform, or they're all friends. They get on the platform, they curse each other, they carry on with each other, but then so-and-so is the next person's child's godmother or godfather.
Nonsense. All politicians, first of all, are not the same. All men are not the same. All women are not the same. All doctors are not good. All lawyers are not bad. All doctors are not bad. All lawyers are not good. Similarly, people do have friendships across the aisle, have always done, not just in Barbados, across the world. There are some people, however, who genuinely don't get on. And perhaps you'll see a little more angst in their voice and a little more hostility than usual. But I just tried to explain it to you. The choice at an election is not about friend and enemy. It's about different policies, different team. This has become even clearer now. Bless you. This has become even clearer now in recent times because of the philosophical divide between the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. The Democratic Labour Party has rejected free tertiary education. The Barbados Labour Party stands for it. The Democratic Labour Party has rejected now the Caribbean Court of Justice. The Barbados Labour Party stands for it. The Democratic Labour Party believes that adjustment in the country is about Labour being on the front line and layoffs being the first option. We reject that. as our means of adjustment in the country as the first option. And I can go on and on. The differences between the two are clear. Now, what frightens me, and I'll tell you this for the truth, is that since independence, Barbados had political parties that more or less pursued the same development trajectory. What we're beginning to see is political parties that have completely different concepts of development. And I fear that as we go forward as a nation, that absence of a common platform of values and that absence of a common platform of what development should look like may mean that this country may go through some difficult times in the future depending on its electoral choices. A small country can't withstand that kind of imbalance and rough seas. You know, we've been lucky that our foreign policy has been basically the same across governments. Our educational policy, our health policy, our approach to using small fiscal deficits as a means of financing development opportunities for our people, those things stabilized us. For the first time, our values are beginning to look a little different.
Okay.
That frightens me.
Empowering women. First election where we've had so many female candidates, and there are young women, even little girls out there saying, you know, I could do this. Or
I hope they can.
Because I see women coming forward in this particular sphere, I think I can go to the highest heights in my area of endeavor. Working with that and working on that, once again, regardless of election outcome.
I think that it's a wonderful thing. You know, I said that I believe in creating opportunity for everybody. And if by what we do we have literally given a young person out there the belief that they can do it too, power to them. I mean, I remember looking at Shirley Chisholm as a young child and seeing this black woman on television, and she was running for the presidency of the United States of America. And it has forever stayed etched in my mind. I remember being inspired by, I mean, I always had a soft spot for Nelson Mandela and for Fidel Castro for both different reasons. I thought that both men were absolutely charismatic and mesmerizing creatures in terms of what they were able to do. Totally different approaches, but they've had a big impact on me. Martin Luther King. So that strong figures do inspire people, and I'm conscious of that. And I see it with Rihanna every day and young girls across the world, not just Barbados. So I am conscious that we are an example and that we do provide inspiration, and that's why we have to do our best. And that's why we can't begin to believe that principles, you can walk away from the principle, and because you're in a tight corner you want to fight now and throw back barbs. Yeah, everybody feels like it sometimes, but always remember this: principles only mean something when it's inconvenient to stand by them. If not, they're not anything.
In our final 90 seconds, I deliberately saved this question for last, because once again in the past 10 days or so, on the platform of the Democratic Labour Party, an entire meeting was held under the banner of explaining Amor Mottley. So I'm going to give you the chance. You explain.
I don't need to explain Amor Mottley. The one thing I know, look, Barbadians have, next year is 29, this is 29 years out of 52 years that I have been in the public eye as a politician, as a woman in politics. Barbadians know me, and those who don't know me personally have a sense of who I am. So I don't think I need to explain. I just need to continue to rub shoulders, continue to mix, continue to keep my heart open to Barbadians, and continue to keep my brain open to all ideas regardless of where they come from.
I want to thank you very much for joining me. You mentioned several meetings and several other appointments, so best of luck. And
thank you very much, Carol,
for joining us.
Let me also say to you that I know it's not easy to come and do these things, and I really want to thank you for standing up, because I'm conscious that you too have put yourself and your family at some risk in terms of standing up for being involved in political campaigning. So I thank you.
Thank you very much again, and thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.